Annie is the G100 Australia Country Chair, Equity and Equality, the founder of the Women's Business Incubator, and a trailblazer. You know, when I met Annie, she's just been unstoppable. That's the word for Annie, an unstoppable woman. Once she knows what she's after, she goes after it, and no one can stop her. Annie, welcome to Lady Politico Power.
Thank you, Hazel. It's such an honor to be here, and following those incredible women speakers, I feel quite humbled, and they were just terrific. What an amazing conference that you have organized. I was recently asked why I chose to create the Women's Business Incubator, my coaching program, and why I became a global women's empowerment coach. These are good questions to ask. And when I searched for my reply, it sort of activated one of my key drivers. And that is that I choose to remain uncomfortable about gender inequality. And I'm committed to being part of the long-term solution, because gender inequality to me is not acceptable. It never has been. In fact, it makes no sense and has no value at all to me. I believe that 50% of the population should have 50% of the available opportunities and 100% of the rights and entitlements that they deserve. What women deserve around the world: safety, security, health, wealth, education, freedom. Current issues that are plaguing the world are a tragedy, and they should not be normalized. You know, I do wonder how the Russian and Ukraine conflict would be playing out if more women were behind the scenes at senior levels. It is when we accept the unacceptable that we reduce our capacity to build the fabric of society that we all require. You know, when I was a little girl, my grandmothers used to tell me, you reap what you sow. We all know that saying, and we need to sow into our next generation with a sole purpose that drives humanity to lift its game. I look around and I see war, sex trafficking, unwanted teenage pregnancies, poverty, genital mutilation, violence, gender pay gaps, and so much more. And key issues like this affecting women are, in varying degrees, a constant throughout history. This status quo has been seen as, if not acceptable, then sadly realistic and even inevitable. But these things are not inevitable. They are not acceptable. They should never become acceptable. So we need to remain uncomfortable until we no longer need to speak about gender inequality. We need to champion equal representation in all key areas of influence around the world, and that means politics. Hope is not enough. Hope does encourage, but it's just a dream if we are not backing it up with actionable solutions. We need to be unapologetic about using our voice to demand a higher standard. We need to provide solutions that work for the betterment of our society. We need to unite with a narrative that inspires and empowers and equips. We can do better. And so how do we, as business leaders, break through the barriers that are currently designed to inhibit us from achieving equal success? We must start by clearly articulating the issues, the cost of them, the impact, the disparity. You see, when we clearly identify and accept the problem, that is when we can take intentional steps to collectively solve that problem. We need to be strategic and purpose-driven. And then we need to measure our success. And to do that, we need to look at the data. And so last month, the Workplace Gender Equality Agency in Australia put out a scorecard on 4 million Australian employees, which is about 40% of our workforce. And that data painted a picture of the current reality, and it challenged me to stay uncomfortable. Despite women being more highly educated and comprising 47.4% of all employed persons, men are twice as likely to be in the top earning quartile, above $120,000 per year, while women are 50% more likely than men to be in the bottom quartile, earning 60% or less. Women earn 14.2% less than men for comparable jobs. That means $25,800 less in your bank account to do the things you love, like feed your children and educate them. And then at the end of your career, you'll be receiving 23.4% less in superannuation. The gender gap is real and it is not acceptable. When 47% of the workforce constitute 67% of part-time employees and the lion's share of casual positions, there will be significant consequences when a pandemic hits, and it did. COVID-19 showed us that women were the first to lose their jobs. Millions were the first to self-sacrifice, to homeschool their children alone. And while managing the obvious challenges, oh my gosh, imagine me with my 5 children, domestic violence also rose 4 times higher than it was 5 years ago. We need to remain very uncomfortable about this and the pressures on society. When your income, opportunities, and spirit has been impacted so significantly, it makes it extremely unlikely that you'll be mentally and physically prepared and positioned to influence positive change. And that's what we need to be in positions of power and influence. Maslow taught us that you cannot operate at your optimal capacity when your core needs are threatened, and they are being threatened. So while we need to celebrate the progress we have made to reduce the barriers and biases that have negatively impacted women's rights, and I often reflect on the times that my grandmothers pioneered, and I'm so thankful for the improvements that we have made. The world is still missing out when 50% of the population is not represented when decisions are being made. Important decisions, global decisions. We need women in leadership positions so their voice can be heard and their value recognised. Yes, we want to be equally represented in boardrooms, particularly the ones that matter. But more than that, we want to be equally represented in chair positions and executive positions, targeted positions of power and influence. Only 18 women are among the CEOs of Australia's largest 300 companies. That's 6.2%. The Sydney Morning Herald, our national newspaper, recently reported that only 1 woman was promoted to the role of chief executive out of 25 appointments at Australia's largest companies over the past year. This is a sign that post-pandemic, the gender equality issue in the professional world is actually going backwards. And so now you see why I created the Women's Business Incubator, which helps women to start up and scale up and dominate in business and to be supported every step of the way, to have cheerleaders, accountability partners, role models, to ensure that they'll be well equipped to be positioned in those positions of power and influence at all levels of decision-making globally in the future. As a mum of 5, including 2 sets of twins who navigated 3 degrees while raising a family and building my career, I have walked a very challenging path to C-suite. And I assure you that we can all do it better. I choose to let the wounds that I've had become my superpowers, to empower women to value their worth. And we do this by speaking out, by providing workable solutions, by supporting each other to ensure that our foundations are strong and that our voice is unified. There was a recent study done by the University of Chicago that was looking into the 2 major reasons why women were underrepresented in politics. And the first was election aversion, or women just didn't want to run. Now, do we wonder why, after listening to the first 3 speakers? What a challenge it is to be able to put yourself into an environment with those hours and the attention and the abuse and the lack of support that you get. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, but this is why women don't run. The second is voter bias that was referred by another speaker against female candidates that they believe still exists. And I think we all agree it does. And I can tell you there's so many more factors, but data captured by the UN Women suggests that at the current rate, gender equality in the highest positions of power will not be reached for another 130 years. So we need to act now. Just 13 countries have a woman head of government. So as G100 Australian Chair of Equity and Equality, I'm currently working to unite and to empower individuals and organisations who are proactively working to achieve United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 5. We must be bold and brave and practice what we preach. We must continue our struggle to employ and inspire women to seek education, to explore professional expansion, to remove the gender defaults when faced with a crisis. Our political leaders will not be representative of those they serve if we are not at the table. We need to be in those positions of power, and to be in them, it is also a privilege. And we speakers, part of this conference, are in that position of privilege with you today. And with this privilege comes responsibility. And we want to raise the bar of what is truly possible. We want you to believe that humanity deserves more. So I thank you for the opportunity to share with you today, Hazel.
My pleasure, Anne. It's been a pleasure having you today. And I just have one question for you, because in Australia, we have a situation where women were afraid to speak up, and they were going through sexual harassment in politics, in the political offices, in parliament, etc., etc. Why do you think it took them so long to address this issue and to speak up?
I think it took so long because it is actually really hard, as someone who has been a sufferer of sexual abuse, to actually step forward. It feels so oppressive, and you feel that people won't believe you, and you feel that it can jeopardize your future opportunities for success, your reputation, and that the effect of those that you love. So it is a huge issue that women need support of from their fellow women and men. We need to get a society that actually says things are unacceptable, that we encourage people to speak out and to address issues, because if we don't go to root cause, we will never be able to improve things moving forward. So we do need to be uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable surfacing these issues. I think Australia is going through a very uncomfortable time at the moment, but does that Band-Aid need to come off? Yes, because by doing so, women coming forward will be more empowered to speak out at an earlier opportunity and not hold on to these wounds for sometimes 10, 20 years or more. And we'll also be inspiring a generation, these girls, my daughters, your daughters, women of our country and the world, to actually stand up for what is actually right and good, because once we do that, we then have a platform which is so strong that we can actually do anything. Because what else is there? You're not going to hurt me. You're not going to bring me down when I feel completely empowered and comfortable in who I am and what I stand for.
Thank you, Annie. That was a good answer to the question. And I believe that Australia still has a long way to go in terms of empowering women in politics. And thank you so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure having you.